actually, excuse me, there, I think. Let me start again. We are actually in week number 6 of this series that goes on forever and ever. And the series is called Big Church, and today we're talking about big answers. And if you're if you haven't been here for a lot of the series, it's kind of like you're coming in at the end of the movie a little bit. But we've been asking the question of how did the message that Jesus gave survive all these years? How did it make it out of the very first century when things were just crazy? And we really came down to saying that it was boldness by the disciples that allowed the message to carry on, to the point to where nowadays, here we are 2,000 years later, and we're still here talking about the message of Jesus. In a world where over a third of the world's population that believes that somehow Jesus and God go together. So that's quite a thing. We said that Jesus, when he started everything, he didn't mean to start what we look at as the church. He didn't mean to start a building. It wasn't anything like that. He started what was called an ecclesia. And that means that an ecclesia is a gathering or a movement. That's what Jesus was starting. Not a building, but a gathering or a movement, an ecclesia. We also have talked about that all these things that happened didn't happen years after the death of Jesus, but so much of it happened within months after his death, where his disciples were there to say, look, you killed him. We've seen him, and he's raised again to life and everything. So this was stuff that was happening in the current moment when they were telling people about it. And we said that so many thousands of people were immediately jumping right in to this Jesus movement. And Paul had gone out and he started all these little ecclesias, these gatherings, these movements all over the place. So, 2,000 years ago, people poured into the streets around an unbelievable idea that Jesus was the Christ. And this idea spread throughout the Roman world and survived ancient Judaism, and it survived Rome at that time. And that's a big deal to survive Rome, because we know the apostles and the disciples were persecuted for their beliefs. We've talked about Paul and everything that he had done, and I kind of just mentioned it, and how he had planted all these churches, and here we are still 2,000 years later, and we're still here talking about it. But here's the question of the day. Other than the message of forgiveness and sin, and the thought that a relationship with Jesus put us in a right standing with God, does the church really matter? Do we make a difference? If we tomorrow were to cease to exist, would it make any difference? Has the church contributed to society? What if we were just to disappear? Would it matter? And the answer to that is absolutely yes, it would matter. Because we don't necessarily recognize this as Americans, because it's just the way we've always been. But if we were to look at other countries where Christianity isn't present, we would see a completely different set of values, a different way of living. The church has big answers to the big questions for in life. The church is the steward of big answers, the answers that kind of plague the world. We have those answers. Our culture is so much more Christianized than what we know. And it's our Christian values that really, in so many ways, teach us right from wrong. Not too long ago, the Chinese set out to discover what makes the West so great. Why are we so good with everything we do? What is it that makes us tick? What can they do? They were trying to, be more like us, basically. So they asked that question, oh, what are they doing? What is it about them? What do we have to do to be more like them so we can be more successful? A man named David Aikman, who was the former Beijing bureau chief for Time magazine. He is a lecturer at Harvard. He has written about 15 books. He's interviewed people like Mother Teresa, Boris Yeltsin, Billy Graham, all these different people. He's done all these different things. He actually interviewed a Chinese social scientist who is indoctrinated in Maoism. And he had studied in the West, and they were kind of looking at all this. Well, what's the big deal? What's going on? And there was a book called What Good is God in 2009, okay? And this is what they said. A group called Freedom Watch. They certify that 89 countries in the world are labeled as being free. Free countries, 89. 81 of them predominantly or historically Christian. Might be something to that, when 81 out of 89. So, it goes on to say, the quote from does the book, it says, it's about Christianity and capitalism. For capitalism to work, it requires a conscience. And that conscience has been brought by the church. And I know people in our society today, they hear that word, that Christianity had so much to do, and they're like, hey, don't group me in with that group. I'm not Christian, but they don't realize how influenced Christianity has been on their lives. And we also think that, when we think about it, really, it's Christianity. We think, well, we're not even that good at it as a country in many ways. We're not even that good at it, right? But what they were thinking is when they set out to do this study and what made the West so great, they were thinking, and they said, we thought originally we were going to find out it was your guns. We figured you had all the guns, you had all the power. So we thought that was going to be the driving force. But we found out that wasn't the driving force. We thought it was going to be political. We thought it was your political power, but we found out that wasn't what made you great either. We thought it was going to be your economics, but we found out that wasn't it either. They said what makes the West so great was their faith in Christianity. It was very powerful. As Americans, we mistakenly think that human nature informs our conscience and values, when it doesn't at all. It's not our human nature that does those things. And the thing you can do is you can look at TV, you can watch the news, and you look, as Americans, you look at other countries and you look what's going on, and you'll think, why do they allow that to happen? Why are they acting like that? We would never stand for that in the United States. But they don't have your Christian values. They don't know the things we know. Christianity has shaped the values of our nation. And what seems, when we look at all this, what seems natural to us, when we look at things, what seems good to us, isn't natural to everybody else. And it's not even natural to us. Because here's what natural is. Natural means of nature. Okay? Of nature. And if we look at nature, nature is violent. Nature knows nothing of fairness or compassion. In nature, might makes right. I'm the strongest, I have all the say, right? The powerful rule the less powerful in nature. Tornadoes rip through neighborhoods in nature. Earthquakes devastate nations. Tsunamis take people away. That's nature. And the perfect example of what nature is if we think of a safari. If you've ever been on a safari, or we probably have all watched some version of a safari on the Discovery Channel or something along those lines. And what do we always want to see? Whenever we watch something in Africa, what do we always want to see? We want to see the lions, right? And then not only do you just want to see the lions, but there's this little sick part of you that's part of nature, at least for the guys. There's this little natural nature part of us that we want to see the kill. All right, that's what we want to see. And what happens is these lions will watch them take down this big animal, right? And they'll start feeding on this animal. And what happens is all the other animals start to gather around, knowing not to get too close to the lions because they don't want to be killed themselves. But they'll get in line, and they'll get in rows, and they wait their turn, right? You got the lions who are eating, and then you got the hyenas, and then you got the vultures, and then you got these little jackals, okay? And when the lions are done, well, then the hyenas come in and they get to have what they want to eat. The lions, meanwhile, they just go off into the grass, they lay down, they put their feet up in the air, their paws up in the air, and everything's good. And then these animals will take their turns getting to eat. And if the lion decides, I want more, they just come back and everybody scatters. That's nature. That's how it is. That's the circle of life, right? The biggest and the baddest are first. Might makes right. Or, in so many societies, I've got the money, I've got the power, right? There is no, in nature, there is no forgiveness, there's no grace, there's no generosity, there's no point where the lions are saying, you know what, hey, let's have Jackal Day. Jackal, you guys eat first, we'll step back. It's not how it works. And yet we think so often it's our nature to be nice as human beings. And it's not. Our nature is what brings racism. You're different than me, so I'm better, right? Adultery is nature, right? You know, hey, everybody I can be with. That's just nature, you know. Even though we all, as a society, we all agree that adultery is bad, but yet we continue to do it, don't we? Cheating that's just nature. Because let's face it, the only reason probably most of us aren't cheating on our taxes is because we don't think we're going to get away with it. If we thought we'd get away with it, we'd cheat, right? Lying. You probably didn't have to teach your kids how to lie. They just naturally did it. And some of them have gotten really good at it. Nature has brought things like slavery. First come, first served. Oh, and the one that non-Christian people, the number one thing they can quote out of the Bible all the time is an eye for an eye. That's what they know, right? They know that one because eye for an eye, that's nature, right? We can overcome nature. That's what Paul recognized. He said we can overcome nature. We don't have to succumb to nature. As a matter of fact, the closer we get with God, the more likely we are to overcome nature. We can let God control us instead of nature controlling us. All right, so this is what Paul says. Paul, who's the forefront of the church, okay? This is what he describes, and this is what he says, okay? He says this. So I say, walk by the Spirit. And I have some slightly different words, but basically with the program, the computer program, I didn't have the version of the Bible that I wanted to use, so I have a slightly different version written down up here, okay? So he says, so I say, walk by the Spirit, and you will not gratify the desires of the sinful nature. Basically, he's saying, hey, if you walk by the Spirit, you won't give in to what nature is telling you to do, right? You won't do what's natural. You won't do what's selfish. And if you want to watch somebody who hasn't learned right now to walk with the Spirit, just watch your kids. They will do what's natural, and they will do what's selfish all the time, right? So, he continues from there. The acts of the sinful nature are obvious. And we know, probably, when we start going through this, we're going to know somebody like this. Some of you might be sitting next to somebody like this. Some of you might see this person when you look in the mirror, you know. We know what we would do naturally if we could get away with it, right? If we could get away with it, we would probably act very differently than what we do, okay? So, this is what he goes on to say. I'm sorry, I've got extra. He says, what we would do naturally. Sexual immorality. You want to define that? Well, you can define it probably several ways. We all have different ideas of what sexual immorality is, right? Impurity and debauchery. Okay, so what is debauchery? It's excessive indulgence in sensual pleasures. So, in other words, I'm going to do what I want, when I want, with whomever I want, right? Nature. Okay, that's what we do. Idolatry. In other words, I'm going to put things before people. I'm going to make things more important than people. Okay. Sorry, I should have went on one. Okay, there we go. Witchcraft. I'm going to try to use paranormal things, and I'm going to try to use power for personal gain. Hatred, discord, jealousy, and we all have the jealousy factor, right? Because I'll pick on both men and women. I'll go with women here. Women, you all hate a woman who's skinnier than you. Men, we see a guy drive by in a car that's nicer than we have, and we just automatically hate him. We're like, I hate that guy. And someone else is like, do you know who they are? Do you know their name? No, but I hate them. Right? So jealousy, we have that. That's just natural. Okay? Fits of rage, selfish ambition, dissensions, factions, and envy, drunkenness, orgies, and the like. And when he says and the like, it just means etc., etc., etc. Okay? So, I mean, nothing there is very shocking, is it? Nothing, we don't hear any of that stuff, and we're just like shocked to the core, and we can't believe that what he's saying is. We hear this, and we understand it, right? But left to your own, you're bad. I'm bad. And our kids are bad, left to our own. And you know what? This is a world that you wouldn't want to live in. You would want to stay away from that world. Because all that is human nature. That's humankind without a God-informed conscience. And you've experienced this kind of stuff. You've experienced that something is just constantly trying to pull you in these wrong directions. To do the things you know you're not supposed to do, but you just want to do them anyways. You can't wait to do them in some instances, right? Sometimes you sit at work and you probably just dream about doing some of this stuff. It takes laws, in many cases, to keep us from doing some of these things. And if we just went around doing whatever we wanted to do, and we didn't have to worry about our conscience and what God has given us, we wouldn't survive each other. Just wouldn't survive each other. Even knowing all this stuff, we do these things. And this is what he goes on to say. But the fruit of the Spirit is love. The fruit of the Spirit, it forms your conscience. is what it does. And it is that same spirit that launched the church, that launched the movement, that launched the gathering. That same spirit is the same spirit that lives in you. It is the spirit that talks to you. It is the spirit that leads you and guides you where you need to go in your life. It is that spirit that tries to win the war against nature. It is the spirit that pushes you beyond you sometimes, because you can do some devastating things if it was left up to only you. The Spirit says, you know what, when the Spirit lives within you, the Spirit says, you know what, even if there weren't any laws, I would still do the right thing. That's what the Spirit does for us. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace. And we've seen nations that don't have this, that don't have peace, right? Patience. And when he's saying peace, patience, and then he says kindness, Paul is writing about peace, patience, and kindness in the midst of Rome, where there is no kindness, where there is no peace. None of this stuff exists. There is no goodness. There is no faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control back in that time, right? Against such things, there is no law. So what he's saying here is, but the fruit of the Spirit is all these things. And if the Spirit is within you, there is no law. There is no need for the law. Because that Spirit will lead you beyond what law and nature will do for you. If you go in nature, you won't have peace. And what he says here, it's brilliant. It's huge. Because we think it's natural that we need the laws and everything, but when you embrace the Spirit, there's no need for laws. We start to learn that it's not all about me, that it's about you. That's what the Spirit does for us. And that's what the church brought into this country, was the conscience of the church, of the movement, of the gathering. And you know what? Here's the thing. As Christians, as followers of Christ, as disciples, we don't think that our ethics and our morality is less than anybody else. We actually think our way of living is superior to everybody else. Maybe that sounds wrong to say that, but we do. We know that the way of Christ and the way that He has taught us to live is superior to everybody else. Okay? The message of the church is superior to the message of nature. The message of the church is superior to the message of other cultures. We've never believed as Christians that all cultures are equal. We believe that our way of life is better than Rome, where might made right. We believe it's better than other modern day cultures where Christianity doesn't exist. And we believe we are superior to a culture that says a father can murder his daughter for disgracing the family. We believe that we are superior to a culture that says it's okay to neglect the poor, because if you interfere with the poor, you might disrupt their karma in another life. We believe that we're superior to a culture that says boys are of greater values of girls. As Christians, we say no, we believe boys and girls are equal. And it's a message that should just continue to shape and reshape American culture the way it has. Because it's the church that teaches every person that you lock eyes on, that you connect with in this world, with somebody created and loved by God who has meaning and purpose from God. It's the church that teaches the powerful should serve the powerless, not the other way around. It is a church that teaches that we forgive because God has forgiven us. And if you think forgiveness is nature, you're wrong. Because forgiveness lets the guilty walk while the innocent pay. And that is not nature. That is not nature. That is Jesus. It was Jesus who let us walk while he paid. It's the church that says, give to those who can never pay you back. It's the church that says, husbands, love your wives and cherish your wives, and wives do the same. It is the church that says, this little thing called sex that everybody's so obsessed with in our society, it's not just for just for physical reasons. It's not about being responsible, but it's for marriage. Where it is the church that says, you know what, tolerance isn't enough. We need love. And it is the church, we get into these sticky situations where we get into abortion and stuff like that. It's the church that says that to all these women who are seeking abortion, that might not be the best answer, because it is the church that realizes that after the abortion there is still a person. There is still this woman who has a soul and is now going to possibly go through months of years of anguish over what she decided to do. So what if suddenly all of the church's teachings and all of our ideas disappeared? What if all of a sudden all of our values disappeared from society? If we go all the way back to when I was talking about China, it was discovered that as Christians would go into certain communities into China, and there were missionaries going in, they were spreading the word of the gospel, that crime dropped, that families became closer, and wealth increased within these communities. And there are nations today that they just don't believe in the right of human life like we believe. And I think if Paul was to look at China, and even though they might have been looking at us for their answers for economic reasons, I think what he would say to us is, hey, if there is an opportunity, no matter what brought on the opportunity to preach the gospel, you go there and preach it. But so many of us, I think, have lost sight of what the church has really done and how it's really affected our country. And it's amazing that it took some people from China to figure that out, what that impact was. So does the church matter? Absolutely. We are stewards of the message of eternal life. And we are stewards of the message of a better life. And for that reason alone, we dare not turn our backs to our culture or our country. It's time for the church to re-engage at every level. Because our message is a message of life and a better life. There was a man, true story, who got on an airplane, took a seat, flight took off, and once in the air, he reached down and he pulled out this big black Holy Bible, put his tray down, and put it out there, and started reading. The man next to him was reading a magazine. And suddenly, the man put down his magazine, and he asked the guy, he's like, "Excuse me, I don't mean to bother you, but why do you bother reading the Bible?" And he realized that he had an opportunity here, not exactly sure what to say. I mean, what do you say in these situations? And he says, "Well, the reason I read the Bible is because I believe it gives me the three solutions that plague mankind. It gives me the three answers to the things that plague mankind: sin, sorrow, and death. It tells me everything I need to know about those things." So the man went back to reading his magazine. He continued to read his Bible. A little while went by. Finally, the man with the magazine put the magazine down again and says, "You know what? I don't mean to bother you again, but I've been sitting here and I've been thinking about what you said, and I've been trying to think of aspects of my life that doesn't involve sin, sorrow, and death, and I can't think of a single thing. Can you please tell me more about your Bible?" It's amazing where the opportunity will present itself to us to present the Bible to somebody, to impact a life, to change a life. And it seems like week after week, you're probably tired of me hearing it, but I'm always asking in our prayers to let us impact somebody's life, to let us do something for somebody, to help us to save somebody who's lost, to let somebody see our values, our way of life. Because it's not that it's just a better way. It's not just that it's a different way of life. It's a better way of life. Does the church matter? Oh yeah, it matters. We are stewards of the message of eternal life. We are stewards of the message that brings life. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, as always, it is a privilege to be able to be in a country that has these Christian values, where we are free to come and worship as we please. We are free to wear the crosses around our necks and the shirts that proclaim you as Lord. And God, we are just so thankful for that freedom. God, we know that this freedom can't be taken lightly. We know that you have sent us into this world to baptize and make new disciples, to tell people about your Son, to tell them about the gospel, to tell them about forgiveness, to tell them about your love and your grace. God, as always, we know that there are those out there that are struggling. We know that there are those out there that are just perhaps looking for something to hang on to. And we know for those that are out there struggling, there is only one answer, and that is Jesus. Help us be the ones, God, to take that message out into this world, to a world that is sometimes difficult, to a world that sometimes where nature can be overpowering and cruel at times. But we know that the message we have and the spirit that goes with us is so much greater than the world and the nature that is out there. Help us today, God. Follow you. Help us today, God. Spread that message to all who are in need. We ask all these things in Jesus Christ's name. Amen. One thing.